Hello again. All right, guys, so we are now in your day 14 and day 15. So you have one set of notes and one video for 2 days worth of assignments. This is one of those sections that I'm giving you plenty of material and plenty of practice because it's that important. We are going to continue to build on this material in the upcoming sections. So after you complete the video, the notes, and the assignments, if you're still feeling like maybe it's not clicking, please reach out to me. I can always show you where you can get extra assignments. iExcel is a big place for you because you guys know that Smart Score will tell you when you're ready to move on. All right, so we are going to be talking about factoring polynomials when you actually have a coefficient in front of your first term. So I am going to skip into your video, which I videoed with my honors class last week. So just like before, you'll see in the corner, it probably says like day 9, give or take. Do not worry about where it says day whatever. You just know that today is your day 14 leading into your day 15. All right, so check out that video. Hello again. All right, guys, so this video is for your day 9 assignment. Your day 9 notes and assignment deal with factoring polynomials from the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In this video, I'm mostly going to be referring to the notes from your packet, but I'm also going to be pulling information or referencing your textbook. So if you don't have both of those, this would be a good time to pause the video and go grab those things. All right, so in your textbook, we are starting section 7.6, which begins on page 392. And in your packet, we're on, again, day 9, so you should be on the notes that say factoring polynomials in form ax squared plus bx plus c. These notes will get you through today's lesson and tomorrow's activity. There are 2 activities or assignments because this is a pretty important section and you need to make sure you have a good amount of practice with it. So there won't be a video for anything with day 9. All right, so in our previous section, you all learned how to factor a polynomial from this form. And you found out that C was created with multiplication only, which made C a product. And then we learned that B was created after some things were multiplied, but more specifically, it was a sum of some factors. In this lesson, we're going to have a coefficient in front of our very first term. And we also need to consider how that coefficient is made. So, if I were to multiply 2 binomials together, we have to think about how x squared would be created, which in our previous lesson, I gave you that example first. So maybe we should start there. All right, so if I have these 2 binomials and I multiply them together, I would get 8y squared minus 24 plus 8y minus 24 again. That should have a y. All right, then I would combine my like terms and I would end up getting 8y squared and then, not plus, take that back, minus 16y minus 24. All right, so I want you to consider consider your very first term here, which is the y squared with the coefficient of 8. That, even though this is a y and this is x, these still fit into the same piece. So ask yourself, how did we get 8y squared? Well, we multiplied 4y and 2y. So that means this whole term is a product of two numbers from two binomials. So A is a product. All right, so far so good. Now, all of the other pieces still remain important from the last section, but I do want you to look at this sum. And I just realized you guys have a pretty bad glare on that part of the screen. Give me 1 second. All right, there we go. So now let's look at this, and hopefully now you see anything that the glare was over previously. So my apologies about that one. But what I want you to see at this point is my 8 is in place of A. That definitely is a product. The negative 24 is definitely just a quick product of these two numbers. And what I have going on, just like when in my previous section I only had B and C to consider, this negative 16 is still a sum of two numbers, or a difference if it's a subtraction. But I have a lot of extra pieces in here. So I had to multiply some numbers, and then add them together. So when we break down this polynomial into factors, it's not just one set of factors we have to consider, because I now have the factors that created this negative 24, as well as the A that contribute to this negative 16. So that's going to lead me into this next piece of information that you are also going to see in your notes. All right, so behind me I have a board or a chart much similar to what you have in your notes. However, I'm giving you a brand new example. So the example in the notes is still important. I just want to give you an extra one. So everything from the prior section is still something to consider. The factors of C, if C's positive, if C's negative, if B's positive, if B's negative, so on and so forth. We're going to use all of that information for this problem. Now, in order to factor a polynomial where I have that coefficient that's in the place of A, I'm also considering the factors of A instead of just considering the factors of C, checking to see how it would add together to be B. I now have to say, well, what are my factors of A, factors of C, see how that would be set up as two binomials. What would B be in this potential setup, and is this indeed the B that I'm trying to get? All right, so there are definitely extra pieces here. There are a lot of trial and error, so let's not be too discouraged if we don't get it the first, second, or sometimes even third try. It might take a few tries, and then as you get into the habit of doing this more, you'll start seeing where you should be going right away. All right, so I have the answer in front of me to, make sure I don't mess up, but I also have the answer in front of me in hopes to not do it right away. So let's look at my factors of A. I have A as 2. Now, the only numbers that can multiply to get 2 would be 1 and 2. And then, remember how I said last section, we didn't have to worry about its order? In this section, we do. So, I have 1 and 2, but then I also have to consider maybe instead of 1 and then 2, what about if it's 2 and then 1? So, I can set those up right away. And then I'm also going to rewrite this to not just say 1 and 2, but 1x and 2x because I have x squared. And then I have the possibility of 2x and 1x. All right, Now, every factor of 2 has been listed. Now, I could list everything else if these weren't the only 2 factors, but I'm okay right now. So now let's look at our factors of 5. So real quick, look at your signs. 5 is positive, but 7 is negative. So that should tell you that you're going to have 2 negatives multiplied to produce that positive C, but also to get that negative B. All right, so I'm going to say I have a -5 and a -1, because -5 times -1 will produce 5. Don't worry about if it makes up to 7 quite yet, because these aren't the only things to consider. And then there's a possibility that I'm going to have to switch. Let me take that back. Don't switch the order of this one if you're going to switch the order of the first one, and that'll make sense in just a minute. So I'm going to take back what I just said. All right. So far so good. I just have my factors of A and I have my factors of C. Now, let's set up the possible factorization, which just means let's set up what these binomials would look like if these were the factors in that order. So in your notes, I talk about how the monomials of A would go first, and then of C would go second. So that means I would have 1x, and then I would have 2x, and then I would have -5, and then I would have -1. So again, 1x, 2x, those go first because those multiplied together would get my 2x, and then I have -5 and -1 because these two multiplied would get that +5. All right, now we're going into these last 2 columns that are really checking to see if I picked the right options for my binomials. So I need to figure out if I'm actually going to produce the right sum. So I need to get a sum. All right, so let's work this out. If I were to go ahead and multiply this again to check my work, I would still get my 2x squared, and then I would get -x, because 1 times 1 is still 1, so there's a -1 here. And then I would get -10x, and then +5. All right, I am good on this, I'm good on this. Now, if I added these together or subtracted them, I would actually get -11. Let me move that up top because that's going to get in the way in just a minute. So these guys would produce a -11x, which is not my B, so this is not correct. All right, so let's try my next option, which should be my only other option, but I still want to make sure I've done it correctly. All right, so I already have my factors set up. Now I'm going to fill in the factors in the correct spot. So I have 2x, I have 1x, then I have -5, and I have -1. Now, I mentioned before how I made that mistake of I switched these as well. If I switch one set of factors, I don't want to switch the next set of factors because I would technically be making the same type of problem here. Even though it looks different, I would end up getting the same exact answer because I flipped these and I flipped these. All right, so only flip one set of factors whenever you get to this point. All right, now I'm to the point I'm going to check to see if I did this correctly. So I have 2x times 1x, which produces that 2x squared. That's good. I have 2x times a -1, so that's -2x. And then I have -5 times 1x, which is -5x. -5 times -1, which is not +1. Come on now. Which is +5. So my 2x and my +5 is correct. Add these factors together and I said factors, add those terms together. And I have the negative 7x, which is correct. So this is good. This will lead you back to your original factorization, which is your correct answer. So let me erase these lines. When I factor out the first polynomial and do some trial and error, I find that this set of binomials multiplied would produce the given polynomial. So this would be the correct factorization. I wish I can actually ask you guys if you had questions, but we all know that that can't happen on this video. So, all right, so if you have any questions on this example, feel free to send me a message, let me know, and I can answer any questions specifically about this example, and then hopefully you'll be able to move on. So let me show you one more example and make sure you're good to go. All right, guys, so I have a new example up on my board. I have 14x squared plus 31x plus 15. So we can see that 14 is A, positive 15 is C, and positive 31 is B. So that's what we're aiming to get whenever we factor this polynomial. All right, so step one, let's figure out the factors of A. All right, so I have the wrong marker. I have 14, so I know my factors of 14 can consist of 1 and 14, 14 and 1, 2 and 7, and then 7 and 2, because I'm just choosing to switch those around. All right, now I also want to consider my factors of 15, but I may not have enough room here, so I'm going to start with at least the first two sets of factors. So I have 1 and 15, and remember I've switched these ones around, so I'm still going to use the same ones here. And then I'm going to go down to my next set and repeat those in the same order since I switched around that 7 and 2. All right, now because I was about to say because I ran out of room, which I didn't because those are all the factors of 15. If I did run out of room, don't feel like you have to sit there and list all of them, because you can just do the first few and you might get it already instead of overworking yourself. All right, now let's try to figure out my factorizations per each of the given factors. So my first set, again, these are A, so these would go first, so I would have x and then 14x. My second set would be my second set of numbers, so I'd have positive 1 and positive 15. All right, so far so good. Now let's see if those would create what we're aiming for, which is 31. All right, so I would have 14x squared plus 15x plus 14x plus 15. I know I'm running out of room there. All right, so these middle terms added together would produce 29x, which is not what I'm looking for, so that was not correct. So we're going to move on. All right, so now let's set up our factorization with these factors. So I have 14x, and then I have 1x. I have positive 1, and then I have positive 15. All right, so I have 14x squared, and then I'm gonna have a big number. So we have 14 times 15. I don't know that off the top of my head, so needless to say, we can probably guess that this is not going to be it, because 210 is already a pretty good way from the 31 we need. But let's figure out what that next term is going to be just in case. So then I would have that 1x, and we can already rule this guy out. All right, now let's keep going. So I have 2 and 7, so I have 2x and 7x, and then I have 3 and 5. So I have 14x squared, and then I have 10x, and then I have 21x plus 15. All right, so these guys added together would be 31x, which is what I needed. This is right, there we go. So that tells us that this was the correct factorization. All right, so I know I went through that one a little bit quicker, but I feel like after seeing the first example, you may not need me to break it up as much. All right, so at this point, you are going to go to your packet and you have this maze to complete. So it's self-checking, which is great. Make sure you show your work on a separate sheet of paper or on this paper. I do want to point out to you that you have some problems where A is negative. So when those occur, just keep in mind that your factors, you might be using the same amount of numbers 4 times, meaning this setup, and then, well, what about if this is negative? And what about if 14 is negative, so on and so forth. So again, it's a little bit more trial and error than you're used to and that you may be comfortable with, but give it a shot. As you do more and more, you'll start figuring out pretty quickly which one should be positive, which one should be negative, so on and so forth. In the meantime, as you're working through today's assignment or tomorrow's assignment, which is the textbook assignment, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me. You can message the Google Voice number I called you from the other day, through the Remind app, through email, through Live Grades. Any of that will get in contact with me. And if you need me to give you a call because you're stuck, message me on those. Ask me if I can give you a call either that day or the following day. All right. Besides that, I hope all is well. I miss seeing you guys, and I hope to see you soon. Bye. All right, guys, so we're back. Now, there is one more thing that I wanted to show you, and this primarily talks about, or it helps you with some of the problems that you will be seeing with day 15. So let me pull up my book. I'm sorry, I was not as prepared as I should have been. All right, so I am on page 393 in your textbook. I highly, highly recommend that you open up your textbook to that page because it's going to show you a pretty good example of a factoring problem that you'll need to know how to do with your day 15 assignment. So go grab that if you don't have it. All right, so with your day 15 assignment, you are going to be completing some problems out of your textbook. It's page 395, 17 through 24. So the first set, you should be pretty good to go. The second set, what I want you to see, I'm sorry if that page turning is really loud, but what you are probably noticing with each one of these in that second set, this number, this coefficient that's in place of your A, they're all negative. All right, so flip that page back over in your textbook, just like I'm doing, to page 393, and I want you to look at example 4. In example 4, they're talking about how you would factor a problem like this when your A is negative. So instead of trying to figure out, all right, so A is negative, let me think about all the different factors that can make that -7, and then that can make that -12, and then contribute to this -25, what they did is say, go ahead and factor out a -1, which is completely okay. So what that means is I know that if I factored out, meaning if I divided by -1, then I would end up getting a +7 here. And that would make my life so much easier when I'm trying to factor this polynomial. All right, so I am going to factor out a -1. Now, when I factor out a -1, that means every single term has to divide by a -1. All right, and then that -1 on the outside just kind of stays with us. All right, now, I have that -1. I'm going to factor it out. So when I take the -1 out, this becomes 7v squared. -25 divided by a -1 is 25v. And then -12 divided by a -1 is a +12. All right, at this point, you just factor the polynomial that you have remaining as you have done yesterday or coming to yesterday's assignment and then the first section of your textbook problems. And the last thing that I need to include, you don't always have to have this 1. We should understand at this point a 1 is kind of understood. So you can just put a negative. It's kind of lingering on the outside. It's the same thing as seeing the -1. All right, so now you have your 2 days worth of notes. You have your 2 days worth of assignments. This should be helpful. By the way, that problem's not finished. I just showed you the first step. So you should be able to do your 2 assignments now, and this will lead you into one more assignment for your week. Go check out that video. It should already be up. And I'm going to end this video with a super cute video of my pup, because a lot of you seem to like the photo of my cat at the beginning of the packet week. All right, so have a great weekend, and I am hoping that I'll see you soon.